I grew up in a middle-class family in Colorado. My dad, Steve, worked as a bank manager, and my mom, Linda, was an elementary school administrator. On paper, we looked like the perfect American family, nice house in the suburbs, yearly vacations, 2 kids. But behind closed doors, it was always about my younger brother Kyle, the star quarterback, straight-A student, the kind of kid parents brag about at neighborhood barbecues. Me? I was the disappointment. Decent at sports but not exceptional, a BPLS student who could have gotten A's if I just applied myself, according to them. After high school, I skipped the college route my parents mapped out and went straight into sales. I worked my ass off, got promoted 5 times in 8 years, and ended up as district sales manager for a major sporting goods company by age 29. I made good money too. I met Sarah at a company event 10 years ago. She was smart, gorgeous, and saw something in me that my parents never did. We got married after 2 years, bought a nice townhouse, and had the twins 3 years later. Life was pretty damn good. Sarah had a great job in marketing, and between the 2 of us, we were living comfortably. Then my parents decided to take early retirement 4 years ago at age 62. They had some savings, but not nearly enough for the lifestyle they wanted: golfing, cruises, a new boat, the works. That's when the guilt trip started. We sacrificed everything for you kids. We never got to enjoy life because we were raising you, blah, blah, blah. Kyle, the golden child extraordinaire, was struggling to get his startup off the ground. Translation, playing entrepreneur while living in mom and dad's basement. So, of course, Jake, the reliable disappointment, should step up. Before I knew it, I was sending them $3,200 a month, every damn month, even after Sarah died and left me a single dad trying to figure out how to raise twins alone while working a high-pressure job. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. My abdomen had been hurting for days, but I ignored it because, well, a single dad with twins and a demanding job doesn't have time to be sick. By the time I finally dragged myself to the ER, the pain was unbearable. The doctor took one look at me and ordered immediate tests. Diagnosis: ruptured appendix with severe infection spreading. I needed emergency surgery ASAP. Pretty terrifying when you're the only parent your kids have left. So I did what any reasonable person would do. Called my parents to watch the kids while they cut me open. Biggest mistake of my life. Mom's face on the video call was like I'd asked her to walk barefoot over broken glass. "Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Rolling Stones tickets for months," she practically screamed. I could see the decorations in their living room, all festive for Christmas Eve. Dad jumped in. "You're becoming a real pain in our ass, Jake. We're retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the same parents I'd been sending $3,200 to every damn month for 4 years, even after Sarah died. I kept paying their mortgage and bills while I was drowning in funeral costs and trying to figure out how to be a single dad. Alex looked up at me from where he was playing with the hospital toys, his little face confused. "Is Grandma mad?" he asked. Amelia was too busy coloring to notice, thank God. "No, buddy. Grandma's just busy," I lied, turning away so he wouldn't see my face. This nurse named Mark saw me sitting there, stunned, and gave me a nod of understanding. Tall guy, former military from the look of him. He'd been checking my vitals earlier and must have overheard. "Need a hand with the kids?" he asked quietly after I ended the call. I just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. My cousin Olivia runs a professional childcare service that specializes in emergency situations. Let me call her for you. First time a complete stranger showed more compassion than my own flesh and blood. Right then, something inside me just snapped. I'm not a confrontational guy. Usually, I'm the guy who lets things go, who tries to keep the peace, the guy who's been sending his parents money for years despite their constant criticism. But in that moment, with pain ripping through my abdomen and my kids looking scared in a hospital room on Christmas Eve, I was done. The doctor came in to tell me they were prepping the OR. "We need to get you into surgery within the hour," he said, looking concerned. "The infection is severe. You'll be under general anesthesia, and recovery will take several weeks at minimum." "What are the risks?" I asked, thinking about the twins. He hesitated. "With the level of infection we're seeing, there are significant risks. Sepsis is our primary concern. I don't want to alarm you, but this is a serious situation. In other words, I could die. My kids could become orphans, and my parents couldn't be bothered to miss a concert." When the nurse left to get pre-surgery meds, I grabbed my phone and sent 2 messages through the haze of pain. First one to my bank, canceling all future transfers to my parents. Second one to my parents: I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again. Not going to lie, it felt liberating, like I was finally standing up for myself after a lifetime of being second best to my brother Kyle, their golden child who could do no wrong. The next hour was a blur of activity. Olivia arrived, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who immediately connected with the twins. She showed them a bag of toys and books she'd brought, and got them settled in the corner of the room while the medical staff prepped me for surgery. "Don't worry about your little ones," she assured me. "I've got extensive background checks, 20 years of childcare experience, and my own daycare center. They'll be safe with me until you're recovered." I remember being wheeled into the operating room, the lights impossibly bright overhead. I remember thinking about Sarah, wondering if I might see her soon. I remember being terrified that my children might grow up without either parent, then nothing but darkness. I woke up what felt like days later, my mouth dry as sandpaper, my abdomen feeling like I'd been gutted like a fish, which, in a way, I had been. The surgery had taken nearly 4 hours. The infection was worse than they initially thought, and they'd had to remove my appendix and clean out a significant portion of my abdominal cavity. "You're lucky," the doctor told me during his rounds. "Another day, and we might have lost you to sepsis." After the fog of anesthesia wore off, I noticed my phone blinking on the bedside table. I reached for it, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. 31 missed calls, 47 text messages, 16 voicemails. Want to guess what they were freaking out about? Not whether their son survived major surgery, not how their only grandkids were doing. Nope. They were losing their minds about their mortgage payment and some non-refundable Alaskan cruise tickets they'd bought. Dad's last message said it all. "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable." Like, seriously? I might have died on that operating table, and he's worried about a cruise. I scrolled through the texts, each one making me more certain I'd made the right decision. "Mom, Jake, please call us back. We need to discuss this monthly transfer issue." "Dad, this is completely irresponsible. We have financial obligations." "Mom, we've already told our friends about the cruise. We can't cancel now." "Dad, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. By leaving us high and dry?" What exactly had they done for me recently? Refused to help when I was literally fighting for my life, treated my kids like they were inconveniences rather than their only grandchildren. Interestingly, there was also a text from Kyle. "Hey bro, Mom and Dad just told me you were having some routine procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" Turns out they'd lied to him about how serious my situation was. Typical. Manipulative. I decided to tell Kyle everything. For years, I'd kept my mouth shut about how differently our parents treated us. I didn't want to come across as the jealous older brother, but now, still groggy from surgery and with a 10-inch incision across my abdomen, I didn't have the energy to protect their image anymore. I sent Kyle a long text explaining everything: the emergency surgery, the life-threatening infection, their refusal to help with the kids, the years of financial support I'd been providing, all of it. Then I put the phone down and closed my eyes, exhausted by even that small effort. When I woke up again, Olivia was there with the twins. They were coloring quietly in the corner, and she was organizing what looked like medicines and care instructions with a hospital social worker. "There he is," Olivia said when she saw my eyes open. "Kids, Daddy's awake again. Remember what we talked about? You can say hi, but no jumping on the bed, okay?" Alex and Amelia approached cautiously, their little faces serious. "Does your tummy still hurt, Daddy?" Amelia asked, her finger in her mouth, a habit she'd picked up after Sarah died. "Yeah, Princess, it does, but the doctors fixed what was wrong, so I'm going to get better now." I held out my hand, and she took it solemnly. "We're being good for Miss Olivia," Alex informed me proudly. "And we made you pictures. Want to see?" I spent a few minutes admiring their artwork before Olivia gently suggested they go back to their coloring so she could talk to me. Once they were settled, she pulled a chair up next to the bed. "I've arranged everything with the hospital social worker," she said quietly. "I'll take the children to your home each night and bring them back during the day. The hospital staff has my contact on file now, and I've hired one of my most trusted assistants to help with night shifts at your place." I started to thank her, but she waved it off. "Mark filled me in on the situation with your parents. I've been in childcare for 20 years, Mr. Mitchell, and unfortunately, I've seen this kind of family dynamic before. You focus on getting better. The kids will be safe, I promise." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. "Jesus Christ, Jake, I had no idea. I just had a massive blowout with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm crashing at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow, maybe?" I wasn't completely alone in this fight after all. Coming home from the hospital 5 days later was rough as hell. The incision felt like a hot poker every time I moved, and chasing after 2 energetic toddlers when you're still basically held together by stitches is no joke. Thank God for Olivia and her team. They were amazing with Alex and Amelia and helped me get back on my feet. I've always been the guy who handles his own problems. Before this, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week as a district sales manager, hitting the gym 5 days a week despite the crazy schedule, and still managing to be a decent dad. I prided myself on being strong, both physically and mentally. But this was too much, even for me. The first night home, after Olivia had helped get the twins to bed, I sat on the couch staring at the Christmas tree we decorated just before I got sick. The presents were still under there, unopened. The kids had spent Christmas in a hospital room, and their dad had almost died. Some holiday. I made some serious decisions that night. First, I decided to hire Olivia's service part-time for at least the next few months. The company had agreed to let me work remotely during recovery, but there was no way I could handle sales calls and manage 2 toddlers while recovering from major surgery. Second, I contacted a lawyer about drafting a will, naming my best friend Eric as the twins' guardian if anything happened to me. Not my parents, never my parents. Eric and his wife had been rocks since Sarah died, and they loved Alex and Amelia like their own kids. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers but kept limited contact with Kyle to see if his apparent change of heart was genuine. And fourth, I canceled my gym membership and ordered some basic home equipment instead. If I was going to rebuild my strength, I'd need to do it at home where I could still keep an eye on the kids. The financial math hit me like a ton of bricks once I sat down to rework my budget. That $3,200 I'd been giving my parents each month was a massive chunk of my income, almost 30%. Without that drain, I could actually afford proper childcare, the home gym equipment, and maybe even start rebuilding our emergency fund that got decimated after Sarah died. My company was understanding about the situation at least. My boss visited a week after I got home, bringing a massive gift basket and offering to shift some of my accounts to other managers temporarily. "Take the time you need," he said. "You've built up enough goodwill in this company that we can carry you for a while." That night, Kyle came over with Chinese food. I was still on pain meds, so no beer for me. "They really refused to watch the kids because of a Rolling Stones concert?" he asked, shaking his head in disbelief. We were sitting at the kitchen table, speaking quietly so we wouldn't wake the twins. "Yep," I confirmed, picking at my yellow mane. "Told me I was becoming a burden and they deserved to enjoy their retirement without my constant problems." Kyle winced. "I had no idea you were sending them that much money every month. They always made it sound like you helped out occasionally, not that you were basically funding their entire lifestyle." "Yeah, well," I shrugged, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through my abdomen. "They're good at spinning narratives." "They sure are," Kyle agreed. "You know what they told me about the surgery? That you had a minor procedure for an infected cyst, nothing serious. They said you were being dramatic and using it to punish them financially." I laughed, then clutched my stomach because it hurt too much. "Dramatic? I nearly died, Kyle. The doctor said another day, and I would have been in septic shock." Kyle looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in our adult lives. "I'm sorry, Jake. I should have seen what was happening all these years." He trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. "How could you?" I said, surprised to find I meant it. "They've been playing us against each other since we were kids. Golden child versus disappointment. Classic narcissist parenting playbook. I'm not the golden child anymore," Kyle said grimly. "I refused to loan them money for their mortgage payment. Dad called me ungrateful and disrespectful. Mom cried and said I was breaking her heart. It was eye-opening, to say the least. It still felt weird, though, like there was this guilt gnawing at me for abandoning them, even though they'd abandoned me first. That's what happens when you're raised by manipulative people. You feel responsible for their happiness, even when they don't give a damn about yours." "You think I did the right thing?" I asked Kyle, hating how uncertain I sounded, cutting them off completely. Kyle took a long pause before answering. "A month ago, I probably would have said no because I didn't understand what was really going on. But now, after seeing how they reacted to you dying, yeah, you did the right thing. And honestly, it might be the wake-up call they need." For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't the bad guy in this story. Maybe I was just finally standing up for myself and my kids. 2 weeks post-surgery, I was slowly healing. It still hurt like hell when I moved too fast, but I was managing, working from home, making calls, and handling accounts while Olivia helped with the twins. Kyle had been coming around regularly, bringing food and actually spending time with his niece and nephew. It was weird seeing him step up like this, but I appreciated it. I'd started doing light exercises too, nothing like my old gym routine, but enough to feel like I was making progress. The human body is amazing. It can get torn apart and still find a way to put itself back together, given enough time and care. My stomach muscles had been sliced open, and simple things like sitting up or laughing were still challenges, but each day was a little better than the last. The incision was healing nicely, the doctor said during my follow-up. The infection was gone. I was going to be okay. Then came the knock I'd been expecting. It was a Saturday afternoon. Olivia had the day off and I was alone with the twins. They were napping, thank God, and I was on the couch watching some mindless action movie with the volume low when I heard it, 3 sharp raps on the front door. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Call it instinct or just knowing how predictable they really were. There they stood in the hallway, Mom clutching her Louis Vuitton purse, a Christmas gift from me last year, ironically, Dad with his arms crossed, looking like I was wasting his precious time. I only opened the door a crack, standing firm despite the pain in my abdomen. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice level to avoid waking the kids. Mom put on her fake sweet voice. "Jake, honey, we've been so worried you haven't been answering our calls." "Yeah, right, worried about their bank account maybe." Dad pushed against the door slightly. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment, and we had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it. The audacity. No, how's your recovery? No, can we see our grandkids? Just where's our money?" "I told you I'm cutting financial ties," I said, my voice deeper and steadier than I expected. I meant it. "But honey," Mom whined, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I adjusted our lifestyle based on your commitment to help us." "My commitment?" I couldn't believe my ears. "I've been sending money out of guilt and obligation while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." Dad's face got all red. "That's not fair, Jake. We had plans. Plans more important than my children's safety, more important than my life." My hands were balled into fists now. "Do you know what the doctor said? There was a chance I might not make it off that operating table. Did you even bother to ask?" Their silence said it all. "We made one mistake," Mom whispered dramatically. "This isn't punishment, Mom. This is consequence," I said, standing taller despite the pain it caused. "I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, and in my moment of greatest need, you chose concert tickets over helping me." My voice must have woken Amelia because suddenly she was there, toddling up behind me with her stuffed elephant dragging on the floor. Mom immediately switched tactics, bending down and cooing through the crack in the door. "There's my precious little angel. Grandma brought presents." Amelia backed away, hiding behind my legs. She didn't even recognize these people who were supposed to be her grandparents. They'd visited exactly twice since Sarah died. Both times for less than an hour, complaining the whole time about the noise and mess that come with 3-year-old twins. "Daddy," Amelia whispered, tugging at my pant leg, "I don't like them. Out of the mouths of babes, right?" I closed the door in their faces, fighting the urge to put my fist through the wall. The effort of standing that long had exhausted me, and I could feel a dull throb starting around my incision. "Great. Just what I needed." "Come on, princess," I said to Amelia, picking her up carefully to avoid straining my stomach muscles. "Let's go wake up your brother and make some cookies." "Chocolate chip?" she asked hopefully, already forgetting about the strangers at the door. "Is there any other kind?" The next morning, they returned with reinforcements. My Uncle Pete, playing family peacemaker. Uncle Pete had always been my dad's yes man, following him around like a shadow since they were kids. "Jake, buddy, let's be reasonable," he called through the door. I'd installed a security camera after yesterday's visit, so I watched them on my phone without bothering to get up. "Your parents are struggling without your help. They managed their finances for decades before I started helping them," I replied through the intercom I'd set up, another post-Sarah security measure. "They chose early retirement, knowing their savings weren't adequate." Mom's voice broke. "We made those decisions because you promised to help us. We've had to cancel our cruise and now we might lose the house." When did I ever promise lifetime support? I had offered to help temporarily after Dad's company downsized and offered early retirement packages, but somehow that had morphed into a permanent arrangement that was apparently more binding than actual contracts. "I'm sorry you're having financial difficulties," I said, sounding calmer than I felt, "but I have 2 children to support on a single income, and I'm recovering from major surgery. My priorities have to be my kids and my health. This is because of that concert, isn't it?" Dad's voice was angry now. "You're punishing us over one mistake." "No, I'm protecting myself and my children from people who've repeatedly shown that they don't value us," I corrected him. "Now please leave before I call the police and report you for harassment." That got them moving, though not without Mom's tears and Dad's muttered threats about family responsibility. Later that day, Dad sent a group email to our entire extended family about how I'd abandoned them in their time of need after they sacrificed everything for me. Conveniently left out the part where they refused to help during my life-threatening surgery. But their plan backfired spectacularly. My cousin Mike replied to all, "Uncle Steve, didn't you just buy that fancy boat last month?" And Aunt Linda, "Wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other family members started messaging me privately, asking for the real story. Even Uncle Pete called after learning the truth. "I had no idea about your surgery. They told me you were just being difficult about some routine procedure." With Kyle's help, I sent one simple response to the family thread. I recently underwent emergency surgery with significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress. The support that followed was unexpected. Mike's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. My cousin from Ohio, who I barely knew, offered free childcare when she was in town. Kyle started spending weekends with us. Mark from the hospital connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. One night, about 3 weeks after surgery, I sat on the back porch of our townhouse after putting the kids to bed. It was cold, but I needed the fresh air. Kyle joined me, handing me a hot coffee. Still couldn't drink alcohol with the meds. "Parents haven't gotten any better," he said, leaning against the railing. "They've started telling people you had a mental breakdown after Sarah died, and that's why you cut them off financially." I snorted. Classic. Can't admit they fucked up, so they have to make me the crazy one. "The family's not buying it, though," Kyle said. "Not after Mike and Jessica saw them at that restaurant last week." "What restaurant?" "Some fancy steakhouse downtown. Jessica said they were ordering champagne and complaining to the waiter that the lobster wasn't fresh enough." I shook my head. "And they're claiming they might lose their house?" "Yep." Jessica asked Dad about it directly. Said if things were that bad, maybe they shouldn't be eating at places where dinner for two runs over $300. He got all defensive and said they deserve some comfort during this difficult time. The more stories I heard, the more certain I became that cutting them off had been the right decision. For years, I'd been their ATM, not their son, and now that the money tap was turned off, the mask was slipping. For the first time since Sarah died, I didn't feel like I was fighting the world alone. I had Kyle. I had extended family who were starting to see the truth. I had the support group Mark had connected me with, other single parents who understood what I was going through in a way no one else could. Mom and Dad's financial situation went downhill fast once their primary source of income, me, dried up. Kyle helped them review their finances and discovered they'd taken a second mortgage on their house a year ago to buy that stupid 28-foot boat, assuming I'd subsidize their primary mortgage indefinitely. "They've been lying to everyone," Kyle told me, shocked. "We were at the park watching the twins play on the swings. I was finally well enough for short outings, though I still tired easily. They're not destitute, just overspent. They'd be fine if they sold the boat and the Florida timeshare." "How bad is it really?" I asked, waving at Amelia as she called for me to watch her go down the slide. "They've got about $230,000 in equity in the house, but they're leveraged to the hilt. The boat loan is underwater. They owe more than it's worth now. The timeshare is practically worthless. They've got maybe $50,000 in actual retirement savings left, and they're spending like they've got 10 times that amount." I shook my head, and they had the nerve to tell me I was financially irresponsible when I bought that used Jeep last year. "Classic projection," Kyle said. "They're freaking out because next month's mortgage payment is coming due, and they don't have the cash to cover it." A month after surgery, Kyle called with news. They received a foreclosure notice. The bank is giving them 60 days to catch up on payments, or they'll lose the house. "What about their retirement funds?" I asked, lifting weights with my good side while we talked. I'd started hitting the home gym again. Nothing helps clear my head like a good workout. Mostly gone. "They spent a chunk on that boat, then invested the rest in some crypto Dad's golf buddy recommended. They lost almost everything." That evening, I got desperate texts from both parents, openly begging for money. Mom's message was particularly revealing. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We assumed you were just angry and would start sending money again after a week or two. They never took me seriously, never respected me at all, never believed I'd actually stand my ground." I didn't respond to the texts. What was there to say? Sorry you gambled your retirement on crypto and a boat while treating your son like an ATM? 3 months after my surgery, my parents finally faced reality. They had to sell their 4,500 square foot golf course house. Dad reluctantly sold his boat at a loss. They unloaded the timeshare for pennies on the dollar and moved into a modest condo that Kyle helped them find. "They're actually blaming you for their financial problems in front of everyone," Kyle told me during one of his weekly visits. "We were assembling a new bunk bed for the twins, who had decided they wanted to share a room. Mom was at Aunt Carol's birthday party, telling anyone who would listen that you abandoned them in their hour of need and forced them to sell their dream home." "Let them talk," I replied, feeling stronger every day, both physically and mentally. The truth spoke for itself. Anyone who matters knows what really happened. And it was true. The family grapevine had worked overtime, and the real story had spread. My parents' narrative was falling apart as more relatives learned about their refusal to help during my surgery, their lavish spending despite claiming poverty, and their general self-centeredness. By 6 months post-surgery, I had fully recovered physically. The scar across my abdomen was a vivid reminder of how close I'd come to leaving my children orphaned, but it no longer hurt. I'd regained my strength through careful exercise and good nutrition. My sales numbers at work were back up, and my side business as a personal trainer was growing steadily. I'd put in an offer on a house in a suburb 20 minutes outside the city. A 4-bedroom with a finished basement I could convert to a home gym, a big backyard for the twins, and excellent schools nearby. The mortgage would actually be less than what I was paying for the townhouse, thanks to the substantial equity I'd built up. Life was looking up. I'd set firm boundaries with my parents through Kyle, who was still in limited contact with them. They weren't allowed to contact me directly, weren't allowed to see the twins, and certainly weren't getting any more money from me. It hurts sometimes, knowing that my children essentially didn't have grandparents, but I reminded myself that toxic people aren't good influences, no matter what their title is. Then came the ultimate karma payback. It was a random Tuesday when I got the call from Kyle. Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack, pretty serious one. Despite everything, I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt, not quite concern, just a recognition that he was still my father, even if he'd been a terrible one. How bad? I asked, putting down the protein shake I'd been making after my morning workout session with a client. Bad enough. He's stable now, but the doctor says he needs bypass surgery. Triple bypass. Jesus, I muttered. Is Mom with him? Yeah, she's freaking out, not just about Dad, but about money. They let their health insurance lapse to save money. The medical bills are going to be astronomical. 2 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be a spam call, but something made me pick up. Jake, my mother's voice sobbed through the speaker. She was calling from a new phone. We need help. Your father needs triple bypass surgery. The hospital wants $30,000 up front before they'll schedule the procedure. I sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing my hand over my face. The twins were at preschool, and I'd just finished with a client. The house was quiet except for her desperate voice. What about your retirement? I asked, keeping my voice neutral, no sense adding emotion to an already charged situation. Gone, she whispered. We sold everything we could. The condo is underwater. We barely have enough to cover next month's rent. And your jewelry? Dad's golf clubs? The luxury watches? I pressed. They'd had quite the collection of expensive toys last time I'd seen them. All gone, she said, her voice breaking. Please, Jake, he'll die without this surgery. The doctors say it needs to happen within the next 2 weeks, or the risk increases significantly. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes. Was this another manipulation tactic? Possibly. But even if it was, my father's life was potentially at stake. I might have cut them off financially, but I wasn't cruel enough to let him die if I could prevent it. I'll come to the hospital tomorrow, I said finally. We can talk then. Oh, thank God, she breathed. I knew you wouldn't abandon us completely. I hung up without responding to that little jab. Some things never change. The next day, I arranged for Olivia to pick up the twins from preschool and watch them for a few hours while I drove to Denver General. I hadn't been back to a hospital since my own stay a year ago, and the antiseptic smell brought back unpleasant memories as I made my way to the cardiac unit. When I walked into that hospital room, it was like looking at strangers. Dad looked 20 years older, gray and diminished in the hospital bed. Tubes ran from his arms and monitors beeped steadily beside him. Mom's designer clothes were replaced with what looked like Walmart clearance items. Her hair was its natural gray instead of the professional dye job she'd maintained for decades. Thank God you're here, Mom rushed over, attempting to hug me. I sidestepped smoothly, maintaining distance. We need $30,000 for the surgery deposit and probably another $50,000 for aftercare and rehabilitation. No hello, no how are you, no how are the kids, just straight to the money. Dad spoke up weakly from the bed. I know we've had our differences, but this is life and death. I looked at him for a long moment. He did look genuinely ill, his skin sallow, his breathing labored. The monitors told the story of a heart struggling to do its job. Remember when I was facing life and death? I said quietly. When my appendix ruptured and I needed emergency surgery? When I asked you to watch your grandchildren because there was a chance I might not survive? The room went silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. You told me I was a burden, I continued, my voice calm. You chose concert tickets over your son's life, over your grandchildren's well-being. That was different, Mom started, her hands twisting nervously. No, it wasn't, I cut her off. It was exactly the same. I needed you, and you chose yourselves. I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Denver was beautiful this time of year, the mountains visible in the distance on clear days like today. You know what happened after my surgery? I asked, not turning around. I had to hire strangers to watch my children. I was cut open from hip to hip, in excruciating pain, worried I might leave my kids orphaned, and I had to trust people I just met to care for them. I turned back to face them. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To be that vulnerable and have the people who should care the most turn their backs on you? Dad's eyes filled with tears. Whether from genuine emotion or manipulation, I couldn't tell anymore. Are you really going to let me die because of one mistake? He asked. I'm not letting you die, I replied. I'm just not saving you. There's a difference. The hospital has financial assistance programs. There are payment plans. There are options. Figure it out yourselves. Mom grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Please, she begged. We have nowhere else to turn. We've tried everything. Kyle can't help. He's already maxed out his credit cards helping us with rent. That explained why Kyle hadn't been by as much lately. Interesting that they'd gone to him for money after all the years of treating him like the golden child who could do no wrong while making me the family ATM. I looked her straight in the eyes. Then do what I did when you abandoned me. Find another way. As I walked toward the door, Dad called out, his voice stronger than it had been the whole visit. We're still your parents, he said angrily. You can't just walk away. I stopped, but didn't turn around. I walked away a year ago. You just didn't believe me. Mom followed me into the hallway, her voice desperate. At least think about it, Jake, for your father's sake. I have thought about it. I told her for a whole year I've thought about what family really means. And I've realized something important. DNA doesn't make you family. Love, respect, and showing up when it matters. That's what makes you family. I left her standing there in the sterile hospital corridor, her makeup running down her face. As I walked out of that hospital room, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in their suffering, just a calm certainty that I was finally free of the obligation I'd felt my entire life. I'd broken the cycle of manipulation and control. That evening, I sat on my back deck watching Alex and Amelia chase fireflies in the yard. Kyle joined me. That was intense today, he said. Are you okay? I thought about it for a moment. Yeah, I am. For the first time in my life, I think I actually am. What about Dad's surgery? I called the hospital's financial counselor, gave them some information about programs Dad would qualify for. He'll get the surgery. They won't let him die. Kyle nodded slowly. You're a better man than I would be. It's not about being better, I said, watching my kids laugh and play. It's about breaking free. I'm not spending my life trying to earn love from people who don't know how to give it. So what now? Kyle asked. They're going to lose the condo. They have nowhere to go. I sighed. This was the part I'd been wrestling with on the drive home. They can stay in my old townhouse. Kyle looked at me in surprise. You still own it? Yeah, I've been renting it out, but my tenants just gave notice. They're moving out of state. It's not fancy, but it's a roof over their heads. They can pay what they can afford for rent, and I'll cover the rest for now. That's pretty generous, considering everything, Kyle said. Why would you do that? Because I don't want to be like them, I said simply. I don't want to be the kind of person who turns his back on family in need, even when they deserve it. But there will be rules. And the first one is that they have to get financial counseling. No more boats, no more cruises, no more living beyond their means. Alex ran up to us, breathless with excitement. Daddy, I caught one, he shouted, carefully opening his cupped hands to show us the glowing firefly. Good job, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair. Just remember to let it go. Some things aren't meant to be held on to forever. As I watched the firefly rise into the darkening sky, I knew I'd finally let go too. Not out of anger or revenge, but because it was the only way forward. 2 months later, my parents moved into my old townhouse. Dad had recovered from his surgery but was a shadow of his former self. The brash, demanding man I'd grown up with was gone, replaced by someone quieter, more introspective. Mom had taken a part-time job at a department store to help make ends meet, probably the first real job she'd had in decades. They were following the rules I'd laid down, attending financial counseling, living within their means, no more luxury purchases. They'd sent cards and small gifts to the twins on their birthday, things they could actually afford. Kyle reported that they seemed genuinely chastened by their fall from grace. I still wasn't ready to see them in person. Maybe someday, but not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But I was no longer consumed by anger or resentment. I'd learned that the best revenge wasn't cutting them off or watching them suffer. It was building a life so full and rich that their absence barely registered. Whether my parents ever truly changed didn't matter anymore. I'd already transformed from a son desperate for approval into a father strong enough to show his children what real love looks like. I'd found my voice, set my boundaries, and created a life that worked for me and my kids. And that, more than anything, was worth every painful step of the journey.